if you understand that awareness is you, awareness is what you are, okay? If you understand that, and if you understand that awareness is formless, awareness never changes, awareness never moves, awareness is always exactly the same, it's always at peace, right? So to distinguish awareness, to distinguish that aspect of your experience, right? To be aware of awareness means that you recognize awareness in your experience, right? So you're aware of awareness in your experience, and you're aware that this awareness that's in your experience has no form, never changes, is always exactly the same, is always resting at peace, right? Is always satisfied and content, has no desire, doesn't need anything, right? So if you're clear about the characteristics of the awareness and you're clear that you are the awareness, the practice is experiencing yourself as that. And if you experience yourself as that, you're not contracting, you're not going away from anything, you're just being what you are while everything is happening. You're in a state of being instead of a state of mind. That's it. You're in a state of being instead of a state of mind. So you're experiencing the awareness of what's happening. And now, see, here's the thing. When you're experiencing the awareness of what's happening, part of what you may be aware of is the emotions that are occurring or the thoughts that are occurring, and those emotions may be upset. The emotions may be anger or fear or jealousy or annoyance. Those emotions can be any of that stuff, right? So the emotions can be upset. The thoughts can be disturbing thoughts, that might be about what you're upset about, driving your car home. Traffic is slow. Person in front of you is going slower than they need to be and they're on their cell phone. So you have disturbing thoughts about it and that stimulates annoyance, right? But the awareness of those thoughts and those emotions is not annoyed. See, that's where the confusion lies. That's where the confusion lies, right? Because people will misunderstand and misinterpret the teachings and the practices to mean, oh, I should never be upset. That's crazy to never be upset, That's crazy. Because your conditioning is such that your brain is already set up to be upset, right? So that's going to happen, and there's no way around it. You can't get outside of the conditioning. I mean, even if you understand your conditioning is conditioning, as you said, if you're going to be in the world, you're going to be exposed to that conditioning because everybody else is conditioned that way, right? And they'll think you're crazy if you don't behave the way they do, right? So you're dealing with conditioning all the time. But if you can experience yourself as awareness, it's almost like one of the ways that Candace O'Denver talks about this is she says, when you're resting as awareness, you have a view of what's happening, right, that's beyond it, looking at it. You're not in it anymore. You're not in the emotion. You're not in the thinking. You're beyond it, looking at it. And when you're beyond it, looking at it, where you are is not being affected. Yeah? The seeing that you're doing is not being affected by what you're looking at. The awareness that you are, the awareness that... Now, I understand this is something that has to be worked through as you practice these practices and as you study these teachings. That's why the teachings are so important. Because if you just practice meditation and you don't get involved in understanding what you're doing, so the way it works when you're meditating is you're practicing being the awareness. That's what you're practicing. If you're moving attention away from thinking, as soon as your attention is away from thought, thinking is the life of the person. Thinking is the personality in spades. Thinking is the conditioning happening. If you identify with that, right, then you're being a body and a personality. That's what you're doing, right? But when you move your attention away from that, and even though your attention isn't going to be away from that for long, it doesn't matter, because if you can move your attention away from that, and if you can experience the possibility of not thinking, if you can experience the possibility of not thinking and then be aware of what it's like without thought. It's like my friend down in Australia that teaches non-duality says, if you don't think about it, is there anything wrong with right now? That's one of his favorite sayings. If you don't think about it, is there anything wrong with right now? No matter what's happening, right? Suppose you were in a situation that was very difficult, challenging, right? Right? Disturbing, right? And even in that situation, even if you were on your deathbed, if you don't think about it, would there be anything wrong? Even on your deathbed, if you don't think about it, would because in order for you to have the idea that you're dying and it's going to be the end and all, those are all thoughts. If those aren't happening, then what's there? That's what the meditation practice is. If you move your attention away from thinking, and when it's away from thinking, if you're aware of the body breathing and you don't make the mistake of saying, I am breathing, right? If you make the mistake of saying, I'm paying attention to my breath, I'm paying attention to my breathing, then you didn't meditate at all. You didn't meditate at all. Because if you move your attention away from thinking, right, and you then experience the awareness that you are, that's aware of the body breathing, you're experiencing the capital T truth. You're experiencing what you actually are. Now, obviously, even in meditation, you know, the thing that makes meditation so challenging, especially for people when they're beginners, is your attention bounces right back to thought very quickly, right? And then people interpret that people then think about that and interpret that to mean, oh, I'm not succeeding at I'm not very good at this. That's not true. Nobody's very good at this, right? So when you bring your attention away from thought, even though your attention is only going to be away from thought for a brief period of time, if there's no thinking happening at that brief period of time, and even if it's a brief period of time, you can experience what it's like without thought. What is it like without thought? Because without thought, nothing is happening. Don't you get it? Because the way you know something is happening is you think that something's happening, right? Without thought, nothing is happening. You're in a state of being. You're in a state of being, right? Now, obviously, it's going to take some practice, right? It's going to take some practice. Look at David Redden, you know. He's only been practicing 40 years, right? So it's going to take some practice. This is not going to change overnight because it's taken years of practicing the other way. It's taken years of practicing believing you're a body and you're a personality and being in a world in which everybody believes they're a body and a personality, right? And that explains what's going on here, right? That explains why the world is so crazy. That explains why we're afraid to talk to one another, right? Because everybody is so keyed up about being threatened. Everybody's so concerned, right? About you're going to hurt my feelings. You're going to hurt my body. You're going to insult my politics. You're going to make me upset because of your beliefs. You know, all this crazy stuff, you know, where does it come from? It comes from being a separate self and a personality and having a unique identity, right, that comes from your experience of being alive and having the parents you had, you know, and all the experience you had as a child, right? And almost all of us are, you know, almost everybody has been negatively affected by the early years of their life, because you're being raised by people that are crazy. That's why you're being raised by people who don't know who they are, you know, who've been coping and struggling and trying to get their life to work, you know, the whole time, you know, doing the best they could, you know, want to help you get ahead, right? Help you to get a college education, get you ready so you can struggle the rest of your life too. So it takes practice, right? But that's why I keep harping on the idea that if you can experience the awareness that you are, see if you can do this in practice. You know, if you're going to practice the informal practice of meditation, not only practice it no matter what the circumstances are, but practice it especially during a circumstance that's challenging. Practice it when you're angry. Practice it when you're feeling really anxious. When you're feeling really anxious, see if you can identify yourself as the awareness of that instead of that. See, one of the things that comes along with being awake is you take a step back and you take a new look at life and you realize, wait a minute, it's all part of life. You know what I mean? Where did you get the idea that everything should be fine all the time? You know, where did you get the idea that there should be up and no down? That's crazy. The thing that makes pain so painful is the expectation that it shouldn't be happening. That's what makes it so painful. Yeah, and that's playing, you know, the Australian guy that talks about this, when people talk about this, he said, and that's playing like this. That's playing in the thought stream. That's playing in the thought stream. So your awareness of the thought stream is not the thought stream. Your awareness of the thought stream is not the thought stream. And your awareness is not upset, ever. It's never upset. So the question is, can you take this position? Can you identify yourself as this? If you can identify yourself as this and look at it, when there's a bad mood occurring, are you the mood, or is the mood something you can look at? That's the difference. If you are the mood, there's no way out. You're going to suffer, right? But if you realize that's not the way it actually is, the mood arises and the mood will change. The mood comes and the mood goes. So if you're not the mood and you look at the mood, are you the mood? Are you in a bad mood? No. But there is a bad mood playing, just like there is weather that comes and goes, right? And when you practice being in the position of the awareness, looking at the mood, try it. If you experience being in a bad mood, see if you can look at the mood, right? Look at the mood. What do I mean by that? The mood's going to occur as certain thoughts, right? Or it's going to occur as a certain energetic level, like a low mood, like low energy, right? Look at that stuff, right? Look at that stuff and see that which you're looking at is not what you are. It can't be what you are. If you can look at something, it can't be what you are, right? And you can look at your thoughts, you can look at your feelings, you can look at the physical sensations. And if you're looking at them and you're having thoughts about them, see if you can be in the awareness position, aware of this happening.
Does that work to the extent of anxiety and depression?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I think in the last, yeah.
See it and recognize it.
Yeah, yeah. And if you see it and recognize it, right, and you're letting it be that way. See, that's the other part. There's no resistance. When you're operating from the point of view of awareness, there's no point of resisting anything, because nothing's going to affect you. You're just looking at it.
By not controlling it and just witnessing it, it'll dissipate.
Of course. Everything will come and go on its own, right? And when it becomes problematic, it's because you won't let it come and go on its own. You get involved. Once you get involved, once you conclude, oh, I don't like this should be different, now you're stuck. See, one of the things about this is that if you practice being the awareness so that you allow the thoughts and the feelings to come and go as they do, right? But you don't get involved, right? They will die out. Yeah. They will die out. Because your thought patterns and your emotional patterns, they exist because of the energy you're giving them. The energy, the thing that keeps neural patterns alive is attention. Without your attention, they die. They die because they can't exist. They don't exist without your giving them your attention. Your attention is giving them existence. It's just like, one thing I did understand about what Bob was sharing is that the identity gets its identity from its relationship to what's happening. It gets its identity from its relationship to what's happening. How? It's happening to me. That's how I know, right? That's how I know I'm real, because what's happening is happening to me. So I must be real. You can talk about it from an Advaita Vedanta perspective. You can talk about it from a Zen perspective or a Taoist perspective. But you start to connect the dots and you start to realize the truth is the same. It's very important for you to study these teachings with the intention of being able to see the truth clearly for yourself directly. You should get to a point where you know the truth. You should get to a point where you know the truth, that you can see the way things are, that you're aware of the way things are happening, so that you can relate to it in a way that's workable, and you can end up with the prize. You can end up with the possibility of experiencing your life as a life that's fulfilled. The possibility is fulfilled. That's the possibility. It's not easy. It's not easy, but compared to the life that you would live without it, it's easier. It's easier than living life and suffering the way people suffer and the effect that it has on your physical body. That's another area that's very important to understand, that the condition that most people are in is detriment, and that detrimental condition is having a negative impact on their body. Your body's under stress and pressure all the time. All the time. It's a miracle that the body can survive the way it does, given all the abuse that people put it through. eating all the processed food, not getting enough exercise, having a crazy brain, keeping the body in a tense condition all the time. Balance is the natural state, meaning that you're always going to be a personality, right? But can you recognize and identify the awareness as your true nature, such that you're aware of your awareness at all times? If you're aware of your awareness at all times, that will balance out the personality. When the personality starts to get crazy, the awareness will bring it back into line. The awareness will keep you grounded so that you don't let the crazy brain that you have get you in too much trouble. But you got to be awake. That's the key. You got to be awake. You've got to be awake. You've got to be awake and be aware of awareness consistently. That has to become stabilized. And if you practice the informal practice as much as you can for brief moments, eventually it'll be obvious to you that you are aware of being aware. And when that happens, you don't have to practice anything anymore. You'll be in balance. You'll have a balance. When the crazy thoughts come up, you'll have the same thoughts to balance it out. So that you don't just act crazy. You'll be able to pick and choose what behaviors are useful and relevant and what behaviors are crazy and irrelevant. And so you stop giving that your attention and energy.